Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Cheat Code. My name is Aldo. Today I'm going to be going over and recapping my pilot season using my homemade artificial intelligence fantasy football project, which I've coined the Fantasy Football Cheat Code. If you recall, the motivation behind creating this project was due to my last place finish in fantasy football the year before. Today, I will show you how I got last place last year and how the fantasy football cheat code helped me score first place this year. So let's take a look. So you might be wondering, how did I get last place? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It started with the bad draft. And it got worse throughout the year. To try to compensate with the bad draft, I made some pretty bad trades as well. And specifically, I made 2 bad trades. But let's start off with checking out my bad draft. So I ended up picking Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard with my first 2 picks. I think the first 2 picks are probably the most important picks, but needless to say, my strategy in this draft turned out to be a running back heavy draft with Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard, 2 guys I believed in going into that year. And then I ended up picking 2 wide receivers next. And I kind of did that because I realized that I didn't get the top crop of wide receivers, so I ended up picking T. Higgins and Deebo Samuel with my following picks. And I followed that up by picking DeAndre Hopkins and Trevor Lawrence. So those are all kind of notable names, but none of those guys had anything to write home about in that season for fantasy football. So needless to say, bad draft. The next thing I want to point out, I had a bad trade. Once things got out of hand, I ended up trading, one of my best players, who was Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs, even though he wasn't great, he definitely was still my best player. So that was a mistake. So to try to compensate for a bad draft, ended up trying to get that back with a bad trade, which you could see was pretty bad. Next, I went ahead and tried to make another trade to try to improve my team, but ended up falling on its face. That trade was a trade to get a better quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Traded for Patrick Mahomes, and I ended up trading, probably my best wide receiver in Deebo Samuel. Another bad trade, and I just couldn't buy a break here. I couldn't. With a bad draft, that's really what created all this domino effect. I tried to recuperate, but I didn't really have great assets, so I just tried to, do what I could. Anyways, that ended up in 7 straight losses, which turned into 9 straight losses, which turned into a last place finish in my fantasy football league, my most important fantasy football league with the highest stakes. So that made me really upset. And, there was texts throughout the year, throughout the season, after the season, that really added fuel to my fire. I was already pretty upset, but, I'm very competitive. So when people want to, rub dirt in my wound, that makes me a little more competitive. So the last place finish was unacceptable. And so I did what I do best, and I ended up developing some machine learning software to help with my bad drafting, to kind of give myself a something good to start with, so I don't end up ever again being like having a really bad draft like I did this year, that last year, 2023. So yeah, I have documented my project, my pilot season. It's all on my YouTube channel. Go ahead and check it out. It might not be very useful right now because that season's already passed and it's predictions for last season. But just in case you don't believe that it works, you can go ahead and see all the predictions that it made. And it wasn't 100% right, but obviously in combination, in concert with my project and my own opinions, I was able to, leverage it really well. And so you will find some background about my project on my channel, as well as the predictions I had for last year. Yeah, so I also have, my website. You go check it out. It really just talks about myself, and you could get to know me. You can contact me. Also has links to my YouTube channel or YouTube videos, but if you're watching this on YouTube, then you don't really need that. But I'll show you anyway, just so you could take a look if you're interested in getting to know me. Yeah, so that being said, I went ahead and created that project in the hopes of, avenging myself. And, my goal was really just to make the playoffs and not have a last place finish. But, this year, 2024, this past season, the stakes were actually leveled up, and the league buy-in was $500 each, and it's a 12-person league, so 12 people times 500, $6,000 jackpot. And so they texted us the rules and all the stakes, So, this was a big deal. I was ready to, try to collect that money. And so, in concert with my project, I ended up drafting these guys. I ended up with the second overall pick in the draft, and it was a 12-team snake draft. So that means I had the second pick, and then I guess the 23rd pick, and then so on and so on. So I think that my draft was pretty good, honestly. The highlights of that draft is CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Rachaad White, Rashee Rice, Dalton Kincaid, Jordan Love, Javonte Williams, Jordan Mason. 4 of these picks were really guided by my project, And those 4 picks were CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Rachaad White, and Rashee Rice. And I think those guys all, were trending really well. I had some picks that I really made really well in the draft that were high value for the draft position, such as Jordan Mason and Rashee Rice. CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, and Rachaad White aren't really, great, really great value on that draft position, but I think they're relatively exactly where they should have been drafted is where I drafted them. So none of my guys that I got this year were complete misses like last year. So I was very happy with the outcome of my draft. But my project did also tell me to pick Jordan Love and Javonte Williams, which I will point out, those weren't great picks. But I felt really great about my team entering the season. I thought I had 3 potential number 1 wide receivers, 3 three potential, I don't know, top 15, top 25 wide receivers for fantasy football, which are Rashee Rice, Mike Evans, and CeeDee Lamb. And I felt Rachaad White was a really safe running back pick, and Javonte Williams offered tremendous upside. I also thought Jordan Love could be a potential NFL MVP coming into that year, and I thought Dalton Kincaid could be Josh Allen's number one target with Stephon Diggs being gone. So that was kind of my logic that went along with what my project was telling me. And of course, like fantasy never goes as expected, right? So some things immediately materialized after week one, and I took, and I really acted on that. I won only by less than a point in week one, so it was like I felt great about my team, but the result wasn't really there. I just barely squeaked by. One thing that immediately happened in week one is Jordan Love got injured. And he looked underwhelming even when he was healthy. Rachaad White looked underwhelming. Javonte Williams looked bad. And Jordan Mason became a potential fantasy winner because Christian McCaffrey didn't play week one. And it kind of seemed like nobody knew when he was going to be able to play. So I had some bad things happen, but as well as Jordan Mason looked like a potential league winner. So what did I do with those, those conclusions after I realized that after week one? What did I do? So I made some crazy decisions. I acted very fast. I trusted my gut. I dropped Jordan Love, and I dropped Javonte Williams. Didn't even try to trade them. I just dropped them. I replaced those guys with Justin Fields and Bucky Irving. So I picked Justin Fields and Bucky Irving on my first waiver wire. Justin Fields was more or less a Band-Aid for a bigger problem at quarterback. And Bucky Irving was my Rachaad White insurance because I just wanted to have that entire backfield in case Rachaad White wasn't the best running back in that backfield. I came to that conclusion because with Christian McCaffrey out and me having Jordan Mason, I realized that I have a startable running back, at least one, and I only really need two. And so I was kind of looking to just establish that I have another second starting running back. And then I also had more or less a safe quarterback backup to Justin Fields. I had Jared Goff, but Justin Fields was more of like a high floor guy, because he runs, and so he could get rushing touchdowns and score points in an easier manner than Jared Goff. Jared Goff had a great season, ended up having a great season, but there's games where he doesn't really score that many points. And since I won my first game, I thought I had some wiggle room to make these crazy decisions. And my three receiver core was going to keep me afloat is what I felt like, Rashee Rice, Mike Evans, and CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you could kind of pencil them in for 20 points a week, in my full PPR league. I just had to secure a quarterback, one more running back, and maybe a tight end upgrade because Dalton Kincaid did not look great. And then going into week 4, this was kind of the week that changed everything. Week 4 was actually my best week in terms of points scored up to that point. However, Rashee Rice got injured before even catching a ball that game. And coming into that game, he was averaging 21 points per game in my fantasy full point PPR league. And immediately, seeing the injury, you knew it was going to be a season-ending injury. So it was a huge, stab in my heart. So some more things piled on top of that. My team not only lost the number one flex guy that I had, or, one of my top fantasy players. But at my quarterback position, I was still hurting. And Justin Fields was being rumored to be benched. Jordan Mason was starting to get hurt. Mike Evans was starting to get hurt. At this point, I'm thinking, let me just get to the playoffs. There's no way that I could win the league this year, but let me just still try to get to the playoffs. After week 6, the writing was on the wall for me that Justin Fields and Jordan Mason were not long-term solutions. Justin Fields was likely going to be benched for Russell Wilson and in the upcoming week, and Jordan Mason has suffered an AC joint sprain. So I was kind of left to try to do something. And what I ended up doing is I made some really good decisions. And I didn't sit on my hands and wait. And I think that's what really helped me. I immediately saw the writing on the wall, and I ended up picking up Bo Nix off of waivers. Thanks to my brother, who really recommended that I pick him up, who's also in the same fantasy league. And thanks to me being able to leverage Jordan Mason, a guy that I picked up, I think in the second to last round in the draft, traded him for Chase Brown, which was huge, because eventually Chase Brown and Bucky Irving end up being fantasy monsters in the year. And so does Bo Nix. And I really didn't think that would happen, but, things just went my way. And those might have been the moves that really won me my league, But at first I didn't really know, it took a while for Chase Brown and Bo Nix to kind of come alive. It wasn't immediate. And Mike Evans, he had a huge hamstring injury that he had to be out sideline for 4 weeks. So I was feeling really, really bad about my chances to win this fantasy season. I was having doubts that I would even make the playoffs. But fast forward to week 13, and I'm really starting to feel good about my roster at this point. This is right before the playoffs, Week 14 is the last week before the playoffs, but week 13 was really when I started thinking to myself, I have a shot. My roster was 100% ready. I thought every starting position was solidified, especially with Mike Evans being back from his injury. Hunter Henry was another pickup that I had from waivers, who had started outperforming Dalton Kincaid on a week-to-week basis, and also Dalton Kincaid ended up getting injured, so it was just a great pickup. Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Mike Evans were all flourishing. The only other changes that I really made besides that was upgrading my kicker, which was very important as well. I ended up using Jason Sanders. I think he's from the Miami Dolphins. And now it was ass-whooping season. And this is how I go into the playoffs, just very confident. And you know what they say, it's to be the champ, you have to beat the champ. So in week number 1, I end up playing the defending champ. His name is Top Dog. And I really had to show him who the real top dog was. So I just ended up putting the smackdown on him in week 1. And, it just made me feel even better. And so after that, I go to round 2. Round 2 is the most important round because in this playoffs for me, because I end up playing the commissioner, who is his name is Gio, and his football team, or his fantasy football team, is I think Godly Balls, and he just talks the most trash, you know. And so he's the main guy that made me very, very motivated to make sure that I would come in and not embarrass myself this year. And he never makes the playoffs. I think this is the first time he ever made the playoffs since I've been playing in this league. This is my 4th year. And so shocking that he made the playoffs. I guess he was very motivated too. But yeah, I play him in round 2, and I whooped the commissioner's ass in round 2, but not really. I mean, I beat him by like 6 points, but it was a very sweet victory, and I got to shut him up. So after that, the 3rd round is the championship game, and you know, it's really the best case scenario because, as I mentioned before, my brother is also in this league, and we ended up playing each other in the championship game. And to be honest, I didn't want to have to do him like this, but I knew I was gonna win. I mean, I just felt so good. The only bad thing that happened that week was CeeDee Lamb was out, but I had a really great trick up my sleeve. I just knew Ricky Pearsall was gonna have a great game. The reason I knew that is because, you know, I just think the 49ers knew that their season was over, and they just kind of wanted to showcase their young player who didn't really get a chance to do that because they were actually trying to make the playoffs the whole year. So they made it a point that year, or that game, to really showcase him. And so I did a really gutsy thing, picked him off waiver wires that year and started him in place of CeeDee Lamb. And he ended up scoring like 28 points. And I ended up beating my brother in the finals. My brother, I think, I don't think he had the best fantasy team in the league that year. He was really the guy that was supposed to win. But if you know fantasy, it's like those guys almost never win. And since he had such a huge game the week before, I kind of knew he was due for a week that wasn't that great. And it just all worked out. And I ended up beating my brother in the championship game and winning the jackpot of $6,000. And I really have to say that, you know, it's not just due to my project. I would never say that. But it definitely helped to have my project, and you know, because I really trust it. The reason it being is because it's using, you know, all the data that it's been trained on, about 14 years of data from 2010 to 2024 now, to predict, you know, which players are going to have the best seasons coming up. So it's not my opinion. It's just, you know, a smart program that I created, and I know that it's doing something special. And so I really trust those results, and I think it really helped me build a foundation this year. But if you paid attention, you know that I made a bunch of really good decisions throughout that season. And so it wasn't all because of my program, but I will say that I definitely benefited from having it, and I'll be using it again. And I already have my predictions generated for this upcoming season. I'll be sharing those on my channel soon. But I'm working on incorporating some new features, like adding rookies, making predictions on rookies, adding kickers, defenses, and some other stuff that I'm working on. So stay tuned. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Comment on my channel. Like the video if you like this. And just, I think we could say that my first season using my fantasy football project was a success. So, yeah, please follow along and enjoy this journey and take advantage of it before everybody finds out. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll be checking in with you guys soon. Thank you. Peace. Bye.